2 shore boats went ashore from the Hispaniola, while the captain, the squire, and I talked matters over in the cabin.
If there were a breath of wind, we could overpower the mutineers still on the ship, cut loose the anchor, and sail away,
the captain said. Then Hunter came in and shut the door behind him.
Jim Hawkins was on one of those boats. He's gone ashore with the rest, he said.
Even wind won't help us now. We can't leave,
the captain said.
I fear for his safety.
We may never see the lad again,
the squire said. We all went up on deck, and there was a nasty stench of illness in the air that made me sick. The 6 remaining scoundrels were sitting and grumbling under a sail in the forecastle. Ashore, we could see the 2 boats tied up, with 1 man sitting in each near the mouth of the river. I can't just sit here, I said. I'm going ashore in the rowboat.
I'm going with you,
Hunter said. The map had indicated a stockade, and Hunter and I steered the rowboat in its direction. The 2 men guarding the shore boat seemed anxious at our appearance. I could see the pair discussing what they ought to do. But they had their orders, I suppose, and decided to stay where they were. There was a slight bend in the shoreline, and I steered out of their line of sight. When we landed, I jumped out and ran, with a pistol in each hand. I had hardly gone 100 yards when I reached the stockade. Inside a 6-foot-high fence was a sturdy log house with a spring of clear water that rose up underneath it. The house could hold 30 people in a pinch, and there were some holes in the walls for men with muskets to defend the stockade. Around the building was a wide space that inclined upward, so whoever controlled the log house had every advantage over any attackers. This spring is particularly advantageous, I thought. We have arms and ammunition on the Hispaniola, things to eat, and excellent wines, but no water. Just then, I heard the cry of a man at the point of death ringing over the island, followed by the distinct clap of a pistol. Jim Hawkins is dead, I thought. Immediately, I returned to the shore and jumped in the rowboat, and Hunter made the water fly until the boat was soon alongside the Hispaniola. When I was back aboard the ship, I found everyone shaken. The squire had his head in his hands, and one of the 6 crewmen seemed tortured by guilt as well.
That one,
Captain Smollett said, nodding toward him,
nearly fainted when he heard the gunshot. One little push, and that man will join our side.
I told the captain about my plan to take refuge inside the stockade, and we settled on the details. Red Ruth would stay in the galley with loaded muskets for protection. Hunter brought the boat just off the stern, and Joyce and I started loading powder tins, muskets, bags of biscuits, pork, some wine, and my invaluable medicine chest. In the meantime, the squire and the captain stayed on deck.
Mr. Hands,
the captain called out,
2 of us have our pistols out and ready. If anyone signals silver, you're all dead.
We'll see about that,
said one of the men, and they ran below deck to the galley where Red Ruth was waiting for them. The crewmen scattered throughout the ship, and every time one popped his head out of an opening, the captain would point his pistol and say,
"Down, dog!"
By this time, we had the rowboat loaded as much as we dared, and Joyce, Hunter, and I quietly made for shore as fast as the oars could take us. This second trip alarmed the lookouts on the beach, and one of them disappeared into the woods. We soon touched land and transferred everything into the stockade, and Hunter and Joyce stayed to guard the house while I rowed back to the Hispaniola. The squire, who was waiting, caught the boat and secured it, and we started loading it with more provisions. After the squire, Red Ruth, the captain, and I each took a musket and a cutlass, we dumped the rest of the arms and powder near the cabin overboard into the sea. By this time, we heard sailors faintly calling to each other from the direction of the 2 boats. Joyce and Hunter should be safe, I said, but we must hurry. Red Ruth dropped into the boat, which we then brought around for the captain.
"Now, men,"
Smollett said to the rest of the crew.
"Do you hear me?"
There was no answer from the forecastle.
"It's up to you, Abe Gray. It's to you I am speaking."
Still
Second.
There was a sudden racket, a sound of blows, and out burst Abe Gray with blood on his cheek.
I'm with you, sir!
He yelled, running to the captain. He and the captain got aboard with us, and we shoved off. We were off the ship, but not yet safe inside our stockade. Our little boat was gravely overloaded. In addition to our supplies, we were carrying 5 grown men, and 3 of them, Trelawney, Redruth, and the captain, were over 6 feet tall. We took on water several times, and my pants and the back end of my coat were soaking wet. Suddenly, the captain gasped.
The cannon!
I'd entirely forgotten about the ship's guns. To our horror, we saw the 5 pirates on the Hispaniola busily removing the cover from the big cannon. Not only that, but I realized the cannonballs and some powder had been left behind.
Israel was Flint's gunner,
said Gray hoarsely. We headed for the landing place, and even though I could keep the boat steady, we dared not row any faster. Unfortunately, this course displayed our broadside to the Hispaniola, and we offered a huge target for the pirates. I could see that rascal Israel on the deck putting the cannonballs down the gun's neck.
Mr. Trelawney,
said the captain.
I need you to pick off one of those men. Mr. Hands, if possible.
Trelawney was as cool as steel while he prepared his gun.
Now,
the captain said.
Easy with that musket, sir, or you'll tip the boat. Everyone stand by to trim her when he pulls the trigger.
The rowing stopped, the squire raised his gun, and we leaned over to the other side to keep the balance. By this time, the pirates on the Hispaniola had turned the cannon toward us. Israel, who was at the muzzle with the rammer, was the most exposed. However, just as Trelawney fired, Israel bent down and the shot whistled over him. It hit one of the other 4 pirates, and he fell with a cry. His cry was echoed not only by his companions on board, but also by a great number of voices from the shore, as the other pirates came out from among the trees. "The pirates are going toward the boats," I said.
"Row!"
cried the captain.
"We mustn't mind if we flood her now. If we can't get ashore, we're done for."
"They're taking only 1 boat," I said. "The crew of the other boat is staying on the shore to cut us off."
"It's not them I mind, it's the cannon," the captain said. "There is no way they can miss us. Tell us, Squire, when you have another chance at a shot, and we'll stop."
Meanwhile, we'd been making pretty good headway for a boat so overloaded, and we'd taken on very little water. We were now close, and in 30 or 40 strokes we could beach her on a narrow belt of sand below the clustering trees. The pirates' boat was still behind us, and the tide, which had so cruelly delayed us, was also delaying them. The one source of danger was the cannon.
"I think I can pick off another man," said the squire.
"Hold!"
the captain shouted, quick as an echo, and our boat stopped so fast that water poured over the stern. A cannonball came toward us at that same instant, and the squire's shot missed. Where the cannonball hit, no one could tell, but it must have gone over our heads and plunged into the water, because its impact contributed to our disaster. At any rate, our boat sank in 3 feet of water. The captain and I got to our feet, but the other 3 went under and came up drenched. So far, there was no great harm. No lives were lost, and we could wade ashore safely, but all the food and supplies were under water. To make things worse, only 2 guns out of the 5 remained ready to use. Instinctively, I'd snatched my musket and held it over my head, and the captain had wisely carried his over his shoulder. But the other 3 were soaked. We heard voices in the woods along the shore, and we worried we might be cut off from the stockade in our weakened state. I also worried whether Hunter and Joyce could withstand an attack. Hunter was steady, but Joyce was a polite house servant, not a man of war. So we waded ashore as fast as we could, leaving behind the poor rowboat and half of all our powder and provisions. We raced through the woods toward the stockade, and we could hear the pirates running and shouting as they drew nearer. Branches cracked when the pirates crossed the thicket. I realized we were going to have a close brush with them, so I prepared my pistol. "Captain," I said, "Trelawney is our best marksman. Give him your gun. His gun is useless. They exchanged guns, and Trelawney, silent and cool, checked to see that the weapon was ready to be fired. "Here's my cutlass, Gray," I said when I observed he was unarmed. He spat in his hand, knit his brows, and made the blade sing through the air. I could see our new man would be a valuable addition. 40 paces farther, we saw the stockade and approached it on the southeastern side. Almost at the same time, 7 mutineers, with Job leading them, appeared at the southwestern corner. In the stockade, Hunter and Joyce started firing their weapons, and the squire and I stood where we were and fired too. One of the pirates fell, and the rest immediately plunged into the trees. After reloading, we walked around the fence to find the fallen enemy. He was stone dead, shot through the heart. We rejoiced over our good success, but at that moment, a pistol shot rang from the bushes, and a bullet whistled past my ear. Poor Tom Redruth stumbled and fell. Both the squire and I returned the shot, but we were only wasting powder, so after we reloaded, we turned our attention to Tom. The captain and Gray were examining him, and I immediately saw that he wasn't going to live. The pirates had stopped firing, so we hoisted the gamekeeper over the stockade and carried him, groaning and bleeding, into the log house. The poor old fellow, who had never uttered one word of surprise, complaint, or fear, was laid down in the log house. He was the oldest among us, and now he was going to die. The squire dropped down beside him on his knees and kissed his hand, crying. "Am I going, Doctor?" Redruth asked. "Tom, my man," I said, "you're going home." "I wish I could have shot one of them first," Redruth murmured. While Tom was dying, the captain pulled a great many items out of his own pockets: 2 British flags, a Bible, a coil of rope, pen, ink, the logbook, and tobacco. Outside the house, he found a tall fir tree that had been chopped down, and with the help of Hunter, we set it up at the corner of the house. Then he climbed onto the roof and ran up the flag. Cheered by the sight of the Union Jack, the captain re-entered the log house and started counting up all the provisions.
"Tom,"
the squire said,
"tell me you forgive me, won't you?"
"There's nothing to forgive. I have great respect for you, sir. That's all. Amen,"
he replied, and without another word, he passed away. When Tom died, Captain Smollett came forward with another flag and reverently spread it on the body.
"He was a good man,"
the captain said to the squire as he shook his hand.
"He died doing his duty. Let's hope we will all meet death in the same brave way."
Then the captain pulled me aside.
"Dr. Livesey,"
he said,
"when do you and the squire expect anyone to come for us? A few weeks?"
"No, months," I replied. I told blandly that he was to send a ship if we were not back by the end of August, but not sooner.
"Well,"
said the captain,
"even if we're very lucky, I should say we are in serious trouble."
"What do you mean?" I asked.
"It's a pity we lost that second boatload,"
the captain said.
"As for powder and shot, we have enough. But the food rations are short. Very short. So short, Dr. Livesey, that we're better off without that extra mouth to feed."
And he pointed to the dead body under the flag. Just then, with a roar and a whistle, a cannonball passed over the roof of the log house and fell inside the stockade, scattering sand but doing no damage.
"Captain,"
said Trelawney,
"the house is quite invisible from the ship. It must be the flag they are aiming at. Wouldn't it be wiser to take it down?"
"Take down the British flag?"
the captain cried.
"No, sir, I will not."
As soon as he said it, I think we all agreed with him, because the flag improved our morale and showed our enemies that we despised them. All through the evening, they kept thundering away. Ball after ball flew over, fell short, or kicked up the sand in the enclosure. The pirates had to fire high, so most shots completely missed their mark or buried themselves in the soft sand. The balls didn't bounce in different directions, and though one popped in through the roof of the log house and out again through the floor, we soon got used to it. The captain sat down to his log, and here is the beginning of the entry.
Alexander Smollett, captain. David Livesey, ship's doctor. Abraham Gray, carpenter's mate. John Trelawney, owner. John Hunter and Richard Joyce, owner's servants. Being all that is left of the faithful ship's company, with stores for 10 days at short rations, came ashore this day and flew British colours on the log house on Treasure Island. Thomas Redruth, owner's servant, shot by the mutineers. James Hawkins, cabin boy.
As he was writing, I was wondering about poor Jim Hawkins. Just then, we heard someone shouting.
Doctor! Squire! Captain! Hello, Mr. Hunter, is that you?
And I ran to the door to see Jim Hawkins, safe and sound, climbing over the stockade.
As soon as Ben Gunn saw the flag above the cabin in the stockade, he grabbed me by the arm. "Ah, your friends are there," he said.
It's probably the mutineers,
I answered. "No, Long John would fly the Jolly Roger, the Skull and Crossbones flag. That's your friends. There's been a fight, and I'll bet your friends are now ashore in the old stockade that Flint built years ago."
Well then,
I said,
I should hurry and join them.
"If anyone needs me, they can find me where we met today. But whoever comes to find me must carry something white, and they must come alone. If they ask why, tell them Ben Gunn has reasons of his own."
I understand,
I said.
Is that all?
He nodded. "They can find me from about noon to about 6 o'clock.
Good.
And Jim, if you see Long John, don't tell him you saw me. Please don't."
I wouldn't.
I started to say, but suddenly we were interrupted by a loud, sharp noise. A cannonball came tearing through the trees. The next moment, Ben Gunn and I ran off in different directions. For the next hour, balls kept crashing through the woods. I moved from place to place, always pursued, or so it seemed, by those terrifying missiles. Feeling brave, I finally crept down among the shoreside trees to see what was going on. The Hispaniola was still where she'd been anchored, but sure enough, the Jolly Roger, the flag of piracy, was flying from her mast.
I lay for a while, watching as two pirates on the shore near the stockade demolished our poor, sunken rowboat. Then I crawled closer to the mouth of the river, where a great fire glowed among the trees.
One of the shoreboats kept going to and from the ship as the pirates shouted drunkenly to each other.
Don't forget the sea biscuits,
hollered one man on the beach. Quiet, swab, yelled another, rowing toward the ship. I want more rum. I got up and, keeping out of sight, headed toward the stockade. Soon, I saw an isolated rock rising high up from among the low bushes. Strangely, it was white.
Could that be Ben Gunn's White Rock?
I asked myself.
That might be the place where he keeps his boat.
I continued walking through the woods and was soon at the stockade. I scrambled over the fence with high hopes that my friends would be there. Jim! The doctor shouted when he saw me and welcomed me. Before supper, we buried old Tom in the sand and said a prayer. Then we collected firewood, but not enough to satisfy the captain.
We'll get back to this tomorrow when we're more rested,
he said.
But now, let's eat and then make some plans.
We ate a bit of pork and each had a good, stiff glass of brandy. And then the doctor, the squire, and the captain huddled together in a corner.
We'll starve to death long before help comes,
declared Smollett.
Our best hope is to kill all the pirates.
We've already reduced their number from 19 to 15,
noted the squire.
And others are wounded,
the captain added.
Well, we have two strong allies, rum and the climate, the doctor said. Listen to them. We are half a mile away and can still hear them singing late into the night. Making camp in the marsh without medicine. Half will be sick in a week.
He frowned.
So hopefully,
he continued,
they'll be glad to return to the ship and get back to sea again.
That's the first ship I ever lost,
Captain Smollett said, sadly. We all went to bed then, and after a great deal of tossing, morning, I was awakened by the sound of excited voices.
There's a flag of truce!
Someone exclaimed. Then another, with a cry of surprise, said,
It's Silver himself!
I jumped up, rubbed my eyes, and ran to a musket hole in the wall. Sure enough, two men stood outside the stockade. One waved a white cloth, and the other, waiting calmly, was Long John. It was still quite early in the morning, and bone-chillingly cold. Long John and his companion stood knee-deep in a low, white fog. The island seemed damp and feverish, a most unhealthy place.
Keep indoors with your muskets, men,
said Captain Smollett.
It may be a trick.
Then the captain yelled to the pirates,
Who goes there? Speak or we'll fire!
Flag of truce!
Silver cried. The other man shouted,
Captain Silver's here, sir, to make peace!
Captain Silver? Who is he?
Roared Smollett. Then he added to himself,
Captain, is it? He's given himself a promotion.
It's me, sir.
Long John called out.
These lads chose me to be their captain after you deserted your crew, sir.
He emphasized the word deserted.
We want to discuss our differences with you,
Silver went on.
All I ask, Captain Smollett, is your word that I'll be safe inside this stockade, and that you'll give me 1 minute to get out of range before a gun is fired.
If you wish to talk to me, you can come in,
Smollett said.
I give you my word that if there's any treachery, it'll be from you, not me.
That's good enough, Captain,
Long John said cheerily.
Your word is enough.
Silver walked to the stockade, threw his crutch over, got a leg up from his companion, and with great vigor and skill climbed over the fence and dropped safely to the other side. He had trouble getting up the hill, however. The tree stumps and the soft sand made him and his crutches helpless as a ship out of water. But he stuck to it and arrived, dressed in his best blue coat, with a fine laced hat on his head, at last before the captain. I was so fascinated by the meeting that I left my place at the musket hole and stood behind the captain.
Have a seat,
said Captain Smollett, motioning to the sandy ground.
Can't we go inside, Captain?
Pleaded Long John.
It's too cold to sit outside.
It's your own doing,
the captain said.
If you had stayed an honest man, you'd be warming yourself in the ship's galley as my cook. But you are Captain Silver now, a common mutineer and pirate, so you can go hang.
Well, you'll have to help me up again, that's all,
said Silver as he sat down on the sand.
If you have anything to say, you'd better say it,
the captain replied, sitting down across from him.
Well, now, that was quite a fight last night, Captain Smollett,
Silver replied.
I don't deny it. That's why I'm here to make peace. You thrashed my men pretty good, even killed one of us. But hear me, Captain. You won't catch us twice, by thunder. Maybe you think we were all drunk. But I wasn't. I was sober, just very tired. If I'd awakened a second sooner, I'd have pounded you.
Well?
Smollett said, coolly. Captain Smollett didn't know what Silver was talking about, but you'd never have guessed it from his tone. I had a good inkling, though, as to what Long John was describing. Ben Gunn must have sneaked up on the pirates while they all lay drunk on the beach around their fire. I smiled and thought,
Now we have one less pirate to deal with, thanks to my new friend.
We want that treasure, and we will have it,
exclaimed Silver.
You have the map, don't you?
Maybe,
the captain replied.
Oh, you have it, I know that,
said Long John.
We just want the map. I never meant to do you any harm.
We know what you meant to do,
Captain Smollett interrupted.
Give us the treasure map,
demanded Silver,
and stop shooting my men and smashing their heads in while they sleep. Once we have the treasure, I promise to drop you ashore somewhere safe, or you can stay here. We'll evenly divide the provisions we have, and I promise to send the first ship I see to pick you up. You couldn't get a better deal.
Captain Smollett rose.
Is that all?
He said.
Refuse my offer,
Silver answered.
and all you'll see from me is musket fire.
Very good.
The captain said.
Here's my counteroffer. You all come here one by one, unarmed. I'll put you in chains and take you to England for a fair trial. Refuse my offer, and I'll see you all at the bottom of the sea. You can't find the treasure. You can't sail the ship. Not a man among you knows how to navigate that ship. You can't fight us. Gray there got away from 5 of you. Your ship is useless, Mr. Silver, because it's anchored on a windless shore. And in the name of heaven, I'll put a bullet in your back when I meet you again. Now go. Get out of here and make it quick.
Silver's eyes bulged with wrath.
Help me up!
He shouted.
No.
The captain calmly replied.
Who'll give me a hand up?
He roared. Not one of us moved. Growling foul curses, Long John crawled along the sand to the porch and hoisted himself up on his crutch. Then he spat into the spring.
That's what I think of you,
He cried.
I'll smash this house like a cask of rum. Laugh, by thunder, laugh! Those of you that die will be the lucky ones.
He stumbled off cursing, and then tried 4 or 5 times to get over the stockade fence. The man with the flag of truce finally helped him, and they disappeared among the trees. Captain Smollett stared at Long John and his companion until they disappeared, and then he came inside.
I made Silver angry,
He said.
so I think that before the hour is over, they'll attack. We're outnumbered, I know, but this shelter gives us an advantage. We can defeat them.
Suddenly, with a loud cry, some pirates leapt from the woods on the north side and ran straight for the stockade. At the same moment, gunfire came from the woods, and a rifle ball whistled through the doorway, blasting the doctor's musket into bits. The pirates swarmed over the fence like monkeys as the Squire and Gray fired again and again. 3 pirates fell, but one was more scared than hurt, and he climbed back over the fence and disappeared among the trees. Meanwhile, from the woods, 8 pirates kept up a hot burst of fire on the log house. Shouting to each other for encouragement, 4 more pirates got over the fence, swarmed up the mound, and were immediately upon us. Suddenly, the head of Job Anderson appeared at the middle musket hole.
Get them, men!
Job roared. At the same time, another pirate grabbed Hunter's musket by the muzzle, wrenched it from his hands through the hole, and with one stunning blow, rammed it through and bashed the poor fellow senseless on the floor. Meanwhile, a third, running south to the porch, appeared in the doorway and attacked the doctor with his cutlass. In an instant, our position was utterly reversed. A moment ago, we were firing, under cover, at an exposed enemy. Now, it was we who were vulnerable. The log house was full of gun smoke, cries, confusion, and the flashes and noise of pistol shots, when one loud voice rang in my ears.
Out, lads! Fight them in the open! Cutlasses!
Shouted the captain. I snatched a cutlass from the pile and dashed out into the clear sunlight with someone close behind. Before me, I saw the doctor pursue his attacker down the hill and then send him tumbling backward with a great slash across the face.
Go around the house, lads!
Captain Smollett cried. With my cutlass raised, I ran around the house as one pirate was shot dead by someone inside. Then, suddenly, I was face to face with Job Anderson. He roared and raised his cutlass above his head, where it flashed in the sunlight. With no time to be afraid, I leapt aside, lost my footing, and rolled down the slope as the doctor shot another pirate. By the time I got to my feet again, a man with a red nightcap and a cutlass between his teeth was halfway over the fence, and another man was showing his head above the top. Then, behind me, Gray shouted,
I've got him!
And killed Job Anderson. The 2 men on the fence hesitated.
Let's get out of here!
one pirate cried. And the two of them clambered back over the fence and disappeared into the woods.
Get back inside,
Yelled the doctor.
Shoot from the house.
The doctor, Gray, and I ran for the house, which was by this time somewhat cleared of smoke. Hunter lay beside his musket hole, stunned though still alive, but Joyce was shot through the head, never to move again.
The captain's wounded,
Mr. Trelawney said, supporting Smollett under the shoulder.
Have they run away?
Asked the captain.
All that could,
The doctor said.
but 5 of them will never run again.
They lost 5.
Exclaimed the captain.
Now it's 4 of us against 9 of them. That's better than when we started.
The pirates were soon only 8 in number, though, for the man shot by Mr. Trelawney on board the ship died that same evening of his wound. But we didn't know that till much later.